Chapter 363, Calculated. This sword strike was completely out of Justice's expectations. However, to have moved unhindered everywhere for the last 10 years, how would Justice lose himself to panic so easily? He merely closed his eyes and froze on the spot, forcefully halting his flight in midair. A stiff and rigid body, but he actually managed to keep himself suspended at the exact same spot. Ling Tian's strike was still in place, however, this pause resulted in a displacement in his originally strongest, most tyrannical strike. The optimal point of his strike had disappeared, leaving behind a weakened version of it. The strike that originally posed difficulties to Justice was thus reduced in effect. At this point, Justice suddenly let out a shout akin to a thunderclap as he drew out a long sword from God knows where. His bold and powerful internal energy gushed out in torrents, resulting in a wang-wang sound of vibration being heard from his sword. He displayed a shocking scene, where Ling Tian seemed to have been surrounded by swords from above to below, as though heaven and earth had connected with his sword with this strike. Justice was indisputably the #1 expert in legends. Even with such a disadvantage, he was still able to forcefully alter the scenario. However, while Ling Tian's sword was displaced because of his actions, he too could not employ his full strength under such a situation. Ting ting ting. The clustered sounds of metal clashing resounded continuously, as though a bowl of beads were poured onto a jade plate, or the rain splashing down onto the leaves of a tree. What a pity that the swordplay of both parties was not at their peak. If they were to clash at their peak strength, then how glorious would this scene actually be? With a couple of slashing sounds, 2 streams of blood rose up unbidden into the sky. One was from Ling Tian, who was knocked back, somersaulting and drawing a circle of blood as it sprayed from his wound. Being in midair, Justice had no borrowing force to speak of, but with the advantage of his pinnacle-level cultivation, he managed to alter the result of battle. However, in the end, he was still merely human, and with the combination of all the different unfavorable circumstances, he was also knocked back and forced to descend with a lacerated shoulder. While his internal energy was above Ling Tian's, he had spent the whole day in pursuit of Ling Tian, falling for Ling Tian's schemes and being poisoned. His consumption was naturally great. And with this surprise ambush from Ling Tian, as well as that godly blade Ling Tian held, it was no wonder he was injured. In the past decade or so, this was the first time Justice was injured in an exchange. If this matter were to spread, Ling Tian's name would shake the entire pugilistic world. As the adage goes, a person's name is like the shadow a tree casts. Ling Tian definitely wished that he would be able to cleanly settle Justice in one strike, so his fame would be spread wide. But he was also aware that Justice's title was not something conjured out of nowhere, and so had already made preparations in advance. Upon descending, he wrapped himself around a huge tree, and kicked out viciously with both legs, launching himself into the sky once again. Behind him, that tree that would take 2 men to hug suddenly toppled over. Falling down with a pressure akin to a mountain dropping, the tree headed straight for the head of Justice. Before Justice had arrived previously, Ling Tian had come over and used his sword to hack through more than 2/3 of the tree, thus with the application of force, it produced this surprising result. Justice had not even managed to touch the ground and could already see the shadow of the tree looming over him. He unconsciously sucked in a breath of cold air, and could not care less about his injuries, immediately increasing the speed at which he descended, followed by stomping hard and flying backwards, avoiding that life-threatening danger. The tree smacked onto the ground harshly, as though an entire mountain peak had collapsed. The topmost branches of the tree even came into contact with the retreating calves of Justice, causing him to frown. Although it did not injure him in any way, this was still too embarrassing. Justice flipped himself upright, and stared at his surroundings, only to find out that Ling Tian had vanished. To be unable to kill him in one hit, his fame would spread far and wide from now on. Standing by the slope, Justice raised his sword and got another shock. This sword had been forged by a tempering fine steel 100 times and had already accompanied him for over a decade without any blemish whatsoever. However, under the pressure of Ling Tian's man sword as one, its edge was damaged and jagged, as though it had turned into a saw instead of a sword. A deep pondering look passed through Justice's face at this time, before he suddenly let out a faint smile. This figure, who had been looked upon as an outstanding person akin to a demon or devil since a long time ago, actually could not defeat a youth in one blow, instead getting himself injured. Furthermore, his beloved sword of 10 years had actually been damaged, and the worst part of this was that he had even been at a disadvantage in their exchange. However, not only was he not furious to the point of turning insane, but instead, after a moment of contemplation, he suddenly smiled. Justice did not fall into a rage and blindly dash forward like before, instead quietly sitting on a tree, head bowed as he recalled all that had happened the day before in his mind. From the moment he met Ling Tian in the Ling residence, his every move, every expression, and every sentence was recalled, as well as his own answers and reactions. Ha ha ha. Interesting, really interesting. Justice suddenly laughed out in jubilation. Ling Tian, you're motherfucking interesting. He suddenly did not think that it was a grievance for him to have fallen to this state. Were it not for his current level of skill and cultivation, most likely this very place would have become this grave. The arrangement, schemes, and martial arts that Ling Tian had displayed really shocked him. It was only now that Justice had found out that the moment he had walked into the Ling residence, everything that happened had been under Ling Tian's control. It was a coincidence that Yi Qingchen was present, and while Ling Tian did not ask Yi Qingchen to scheme with him, his plan had made full use of Yi Qingchen's presence to lead Justice to fall into the palm of his hand. Ling Tian had taken advantage when Yi Qingchen and Justice were talking to cut in the conversation, attracting attention to himself. Since Yi Qingchen was on the scene, with Justice's character, he would definitely give face to Yi Qingchen and not kill Ling Tian in front of him. He wanted to first let Yi Qingchen finish talking, but Ling Tian had cut in and continued the conversation by himself. Through this, Ling Tian had managed to successfully dissipate the killing intent Justice originally had for him into a three-way conversation. In front of an old friend, if his friend were to also smile and speak to you, you couldn't possibly just ignore him, right? Once he replied to Ling Tian, he had already fallen into Ling Tian's trap, and under these conditions, he would not take action in the Ling residence. Right after this, Ling Tian immediately took out the quality wines, and while Ling Tian only invited Yi Qingchen to drink, without any intention to butter Justice up, being in the same sect as Yi Qingchen and also with a mission at hand, how could Justice leave the area? He could also be said to be entitled to drink the wine. And there was Ling Tian's second trap. The moment Yi Qingchen raised his cup, Ling Tian took the chance to excuse himself so as to speak to Ling Chen. Yi Qingchen couldn't possibly stop him from doing so, and thus could only turn to Justice. Justice even suspected that Ling Tian's words to Ling Chen were all designed with him listening in mind, because if the contents were really private, then Ling Tian could have used voice transmission instead. To resort to whispering in her ears, wasn't that akin to attempting to deceive oneself by believing that an expert would not be able to eavesdrop? Following this was Ling Tian's provoking words, displaying his confidence and arrogance to him. But all this was actually spoken with his identity of being from beyond heavens in mind. By rousing Justice's arrogance through reverse psychology, Ling Tian made him accept a bet of a half-year with him. Once the bet was set, and when Justice himself was feeling pleased with himself, Ling Tian suddenly attacked him, catching him unprepared. To have thrown his face in front of his old friend, this would definitely incur his wrath, and thus he had completely fallen into Ling Tian's traps. The following schemes were all designed to further provoke his ire, making him constantly fall into ambushes and sap him of his strength. Justice could predict that every path that he walked, Ling Tian had walked through it once, but with all the elaborate schemes that he employed, he ensured that Justice himself would spend enough time in there for him to walk the same route a few times. In this manner, Ling Tian gained the necessary time to continue scheming, and set this entire valley to become a death trap. As for the poisoned needles behind his back, they were the pinnacle of assassination tools. Justice knew that if not for his quick reaction, the needles would have pierced into his eyes, and by then, whether he was the undisputed #1 expert or not, he was as good as a fish on the chopping board. Thinking of this, Justice could not help but shiver. Just like that, under Ling Tian's plotting, he had lost over half of his internal energy reserves. However, Ling Tian still pretended to be on the losing side, playing little tricks here and there as Ling Tian led him towards the kill site that Ling Tian had prepared long in advance. Again, Ling Tian made use of the territory to launch an abrupt attack, which if not for his movement techniques, he would have taken a serious hit. This did not end there, as surprisingly, Ling Tian had actually provided himself with a countermeasure, whether he succeeded or not. The clean slice through more than half of the tree trunk already told Justice the story. It spoke volumes about Ling Tian's meticulousness and attention to detail. Ling Tian did not even let go of any possibility. With so many layers of schemes in place, Ling Tian finally achieved a result that would shock the entire pugilistic community: to be able to exchange blows with the martial order medallion owner, Justice, on even terms. It was to the point that, if Justice was just a little bit lacking, he would have been finished off. Justice laughed bitterly. He realized that he had made the wrong choice from the very beginning. From the moment the bet was made, he had always assumed it was for Ling Tian to escape from him. However, it was actually the opposite, that Ling Tian was actually plotting for his death while on the run. He employed all sorts of methods, despicable or not, just to kill him. What an arrogant fellow who does not know of the immensity of the heavens and earth. What an intelligent and treacherous Ling Tian. Even a lion would use its full strength to catch a rabbit. Was it that his life had been too smooth-flowing the last few years? Chapter 364, Disguise. However, what should he do next? Facing such a crafty foe with plenty of strange ideas, Justice had finally treated Ling Tian as a worthy foe. However, Justice could not help but feel that his opponent's next move was difficult. From their encounter today, Justice already had a rough idea of Ling Tian's plan for the next half a year: delay. Drag the fight on. Ling Tian would definitely continue to escape with all he had, but would undoubtedly deal a killing blow as long as he had the chance. Furthermore, the thing which gave Justice the biggest headache was the fact that Ling Tian obviously meticulously planned each and every one of his moves. Regardless of whether or not his killing blow was effective, Ling Tian would definitely plan an escape route for himself. Perhaps the only way for Ling Tian to stop would be the death of Justice. While Ling Tian's martial arts were far beneath his, Ling Tian's movement techniques weren't much weaker than his own and were even more exquisite. At the same time, the thing that puzzled Justice the most was the fact that a pampered young noble like Ling Tian would be so proficient with concealment techniques. Not only that, Ling Tian was also extremely familiar with escaping for his life. Just what kind of a strategy should Justice adopt? While it had been just a short while, Justice was shocked to realize that Ling Tian's experience with escaping was far above the blood swallow, Liu Fei, who was famed for his movement techniques and concealment methods. This was something unbelievable. The blood swallow was an infamous character in the pugilistic world who everyone sought to kill. It was no exaggeration to say that the blood swallow was the #1 enemy of the world and lived his life on the edge, being chased all year round. However, Ling Tian was even more experienced than the blood swallow. Was Ling Tian really a pampered young noble? Ever since they left Skybearing City, Justice predicted that Ling Tian would definitely play a game of hide-and-seek with him along the borders of Skybearing. Justice was certain that Ling Tian would make use of the various factions he had in Skybearing to block or distract him. However, the present progress was largely out of his expectations. After passing through this ravine, they would be in the Western Han territory. What is this brat thinking of? Leaving his own territory and bringing me for a tour around the world? This was no different from playing with fire. If Ling Tian was the slightest bit careless, the Ximen family would definitely surround him on all sides, and Ling Tian would die a horrible death. Was Ling Tian really playing with fire? In front of Justice was a forked road with one road leading to the celestial gathering city of Western Han and the other leading to the Goldwater city also of Western Han. Without any hesitation, Justice immediately continued his chase toward the celestial gathering city. While Ling Tian was extremely careful and meticulous, he was also extremely arrogant and prideful. Despite the celestial gathering city being home to his mortal enemy, the Ximen family, Ling Tian would definitely not be wary about the Ximen family. Even if he was being chased by a frightening killer, he definitely wouldn't be bothered. On the contrary, if Ling Tian would go against his heart and pick Goldwater City instead to escape with his life, Justice would definitely look down on Ling Tian. Thus, Justice headed towards Celestial Gathering City without any hesitation. On the other hand, Ling Tian was panting heavily with the pain on his shoulder attacking him in waves. This made Ling Tian feel extremely displeased and annoyed. He felt that he was too anxious and not steady enough. If he could persist for a while longer and fight Justice a while later, his chances for victory would definitely be higher. Even if he couldn't win, he was certain that Justice's injuries would be much worse than his. But because of a moment of rashness, he had lost such a good opportunity. With Justice's intellect and experience, Justice would definitely be able to guess his intention and would never give him a second chance. Ling Tian gave a self-deprecating smile. What if? There are no what ifs in this world. His next move must definitely be planned properly. If he were to be blocked by Justice, it would be extremely difficult for him to escape. Looking at the bend in front, there seemed to be a small hut by the side of the road with a small banner sticking out. To think that there would be a tavern at such a desolate place. Looking at the huge wine word on the banner, Ling Tian felt his stomach growling. It wasn't because he was craving for wine but because he was truly hungry. As long as there was wine, how could there not be food to accompany it? While escaping was important, his meals should not be neglected. If not, where would he find the strength to escape? Furthermore, if his estimations were correct, Justice would probably be catching up soon as well. After not eating for a full day, Justice wasn't made out of steel and would probably want to check his injuries and plan his next move as well. Perhaps. Ling Tian's eyes lit up and walked behind a tree. When he came out from behind the tree, he had been transformed completely. His white robe was gone and replaced with a black robe. At the same time, his hair was now half black and half white and his face filled with wrinkles. His clear eyes also turned foggy, and his usually straight back began to slouch. Ling Tian had completely transformed into a 60 to 70-year-old beggar. His face-changing techniques were just too mystical. Ling Tian then gave out a chuckle and walked unsteadily into the tavern. After Justice had given chase for miles, he was still unable to spot a single trace of Ling Tian. If not for Justice's will being more resolute than others, he would definitely suspect that he had given chase in the wrong direction. Right at this moment, the banner of the tavern fluttered in front of his eyes. Regardless of how high his martial arts attainment was, Justice was still a human and had his needs as well. He could not help but gulp down a mouthful of saliva as his stomach began to growl. At the same time, Justice could not help but think to himself with a slight trace of fear, being agitated by Ling Tian, I actually forgot to eat my meals. This is definitely not a good thing. This was evidence that Ling Tian had successfully incited his rage. If this chase were to persist for a long time, it would be inevitable for Justice to lose his cool from Ling Tian's provocations. He must definitely maintain his cool. Ling Tian ordered a huge plate of beef and a bowl of noodles as his stomach growled again in the face of the delicacies in front of him. After a day of escaping, Justice wasn't the only one who was tired. Ling Tian himself was exhausted as well and completely famished. As for wine, how could Ling Tian be attracted by the low-quality products of this tavern after drinking his fine collection of wine every day? Thus, he didn't bother to order wine at all. Right at this moment, Ling Tian felt his heart skip a beat and a figure walked into the tavern. Then, a crisp voice sounded, "Waiter, give me a plate of beef and a large bowl of noodles." It was Justice. Ling Tian could not help but be shocked. Why did this fellow order the same dishes as me? Thinking about that, he let out a burp and raised his head up openly, wanting to look over at Justice's direction with a pair of squinting eyes, only to see Justice standing right in front of him. While Justice looked calm on the surface, he was actually extremely anxious in his heart. After standing at the peak of the pugilistic world for decades, there had never been anyone capable of escaping from him. However, his half-a-year bet with Ling Tian had just begun and he was already on the losing end. Furthermore, he had completely lost sight of Ling Tian at the present moment. With his sixth sense, he was certain that Ling Tian wasn't too far away from him, but he just couldn't determine Ling Tian's exact location. It was just far too strange. For such a situation to occur, there was only a single explanation: Ling Tian had also entered into the martial way realm. But after the few encounters he had with Ling Tian, Justice was sure that Ling Tian hadn't reached the martial way realm and was only at the middle Yantian stage. In fact, he was even weaker than Yu Zhao Chen from 2 years ago. But just how did Ling Tian escape from him? There just wasn't an explanation for that. Just when he was feeling frustrated and in doubt, he saw the old man staring at him with a pair of curious-looking eyes. A sudden thought surfaced in his mind and Justice asked, "Old brother, did you see a white-robed young man pass by here?" "White-robed young man?" The old man's eyes lit up and he replied with a hoarse voice, "I think I saw a white-robed young man passing by hastily just now. As for his age, please forgive this old man for my poor eyesight." Little brother, is that young man your relative?" Justice's eyes lit up. With Ling Tian's speed, it would be strange if the old man could see his face clearly. He then replied with a smile, "That's right, thank you old brother for your information." Then, he took out an ingot of silver and placed it on the table. "Let me treat old brother to some wine." The eyes of the old man lit up and he seemed to have turned into a miser who was in front of a mountain of gold. With his trembling hands, he grabbed the ingot in his hands and tried to chew on it with the corner of his teeth. He then shouted out, "Silver! It's real silver!" He then hugged the silver and began tearing up. Justice let out a soft sigh. After seeing so much in the world, Justice was used to the scene in front of him and said, "Silver and gold are just material possessions. Why does old brother have to act in such a manner?" At the same time, the waiter had also served Justice's plate of beef and bowl of noodles. That old man then said with agitation, "Little brother may not know this, but my wife has been toiling for a good half of her lifetime. She recently succumbed to her fatigue with her life near the end. However, this old man does not have any money to hire a physician for my wife. With this ingot of silver, my wife can be saved." As he said that, tears filled up his eyes again and he wiped them away with his sleeves before they could fall. For some odd reason, Justice suddenly felt that something was wrong. However, he could not put a finger on just what was wrong. Justice could not help but think to himself, "Can it be that I am exhausted to the point where my judgment has been affected?" Shaking his head and throwing out such frustrating thoughts, he heard the old man's trembling voice and felt a tinge of sorrow in his heart. For all his life, he had followed the desires of his heart, and he actually unknowingly performed a great deed today. Justice let out a long sigh and asked, "What is old brother's surname? How old are you?" That old man lowered his head with a tinge of embarrassment. "This old man's surname is Huo and my name is Huo Yuanjia. I am 63 this year." Chapter 365, Furious Pursuit. Justice let out a no sound and buried his head back in his noodles. Suddenly, he felt as though he could not swallow his food properly, as his heart started to feel uneasy. Something felt off somewhere, as though he had come close to figuring out the truth, but was covered by one final veil. A perplexed look surfaced on his face. At that moment, he heard the old man Huo Yuanjia speaking hurriedly, "Enjoy your food, friend. This old man is going to bring my wife to see the physician." I thank this younger brother for once again bestowing such a great gift upon me. Justice suppressed the frustration in his heart as he smiled. "Go ahead, this matter shouldn't be delayed. I hope that this brother can successfully invite a famed physician and nurse your wife back to great health. Your kind words are etched in my heart." The old man smiled in a weird manner and walked outside. Justice grabbed a piece of beef with his chopsticks and slowly chewed on it. He could not help but let out a sigh as he thought, with so many people stricken with problems in the world, even if one is a saint, he or she cannot save everyone. Seeing the waiter of the wine shop staring blankly at him, Justice could not help let out a laugh as he thought, how could this country bumpkin understand what I'm talking about? As he thought about this, his enthusiasm waned, and he waved at him, asking, "Friend, how far is it from here to the Immortal Gathering City?" The waiter immediately rolled his eyes at him. "It's really far, at least 20 to 30 kilometers. Customer, are you planning to go to the Immortal Gathering City? If you are, then you had better bring more food along. For that entire journey, there will not be a single person along the way, let alone a tavern." Justice smiled at that, about to reply, when suddenly his face contracted. "Nobody at all for the whole journey? Then where's the nearest village from here?" The waiter sighed as he replied, "Customer, I've already told you that there will be no one for the next 20 kilometers or so how would there be a village?" As he spoke, he looked at Justice in a different light. No wonder this person was so generous, immediately taking out a large silver ingot. So he was actually a fool. Justice was stunned on the spot, and he finally asked in a pained voice, "That old man just now? Have you seen him before?" The waiter rolled his eyes once again. "This master must be joking with me. Such aged people will never walk along this route, or at least they will not have escaped my eyes. But I've never seen this old man before. The number of people around these areas has always been few." Peng! A loud noise was heard as the entire table was pulverized into sawdust. The waiter only saw a blur before he realized that the green-robed man had vanished in front of him, just like a ghost and demon from the legends. "FKME." The waiter immediately kneeled on the ground as he kowtowed in the direction, his entire body trembling. "No wonder the fortune teller told me that my 8 characters S1 are weak and susceptible to evil influences. This sort of matter, if it's not a demonic encounter, then what else could it be?" Before he could even climb back up on his feet, a whistling sound could be heard, and a huge ingot of silver flew from afar and landed before him. He exclaimed in surprise, and thought again, could it be that I did not have a demonic encounter, but rather met the fortune deity himself? Justice's face looked like a thunderstorm right now, and his eyes looked as though they could spit out flames at any time. He just realized that Huo Yuanjia was just a character that Ling Tian had made up. Having thought about this, he naturally understood why he had constantly felt uneasy. It was because his target was in front of him all the time. And he had even cheated an ingot of silver from him. What a good Ling Tian, to actually disguise as an old man to fool me. He had spent so much effort to chase down his target, but was unable to recognize Ling Tian even though that target was sitting in front of him. He had even allowed that little brat to call him little brother. Justice now felt like pulling Ling Tian's tongue out. A small brat of only 16 or 17 years old, and Justice had even cheerfully called him old brother. A real scoundrel, this brat is asking for death. Justice was apoplectic with rage. In his entire life, he had never been so angry, but right now, Justice felt as though he could swallow Ling Tian whole if he caught up to him. The advice he previously told himself, to calm down, had long been thrown out of the window. With his superior movement techniques, and under the full urging of his internal energy, Justice's speed was shocking. In a blink of an eye, he had already passed over 5 kilometers, and turning around another bend, he saw a primitive jungle as far as his eyes could see, which made him even more depressed. Coupled with the thought on how Ling Tian dressed up as an old man to cheat him, he could not hold in his anger anymore. He caught sight of a tiny black dot far ahead from him, and Justice could see clearly that it was the old man Huo Yuanjia. Oh no, it should be Ling Tian. That 60 to 70-year-old looking man was actually literally flying across the plains. Justice shouted in fury, "Ling Tian! You darn brat, why don't you change your profession to be an actor instead?" Ling Tian still had on that distressed expression of an old man, and turning back and seeing Justice catching up to him, he could not help but guffaw in laughter, and picking up his speed, he jeered, "Little brother, this old brother is going to visit the physician, are you coming along with me?" The veins in Justice's temples started jumping as his eyes turned bloodshot. He yelled, "Ling Tian! I'll skin you alive! Stop running if you dare!" With a loud laugh, Ling Tian appeared in front of the forest, and his voice could be heard from afar, "Little bro, I'll wait for you in the forest." Justice let out a loud snarl as he chased close behind, smashing headlong into the forest. Twigs and branches were smashed apart along the way, without any resistance as he barreled towards Ling Tian. Going 100 feet into the jungle, the traces of Ling Tian disappeared once again. Justice panted heavily as he surveyed his surroundings. Even if he were to use all the water from the 3 rivers and 5 lakes too, he would still not be able to wash off his shame today. The humiliation he received today surpassed his entire lifetime's worth, causing him to almost go mad. The sound of startled birds continuously rang out within the forest for a while, and it was only after a long time that Justice finally managed to calm himself down. In his surroundings, other than the sound of panicked animals fleeing from the aura he exuded, there were no other noises. Suddenly, Justice began to laugh once again. Hadn't he reminded himself again and again not to fall for Ling Tian's tricks? The kid seemed to have some power to drive someone crazy. He already witnessed it firsthand and continuously warned himself to keep a lookout for any possible ambushes, but how did he know that Ling Tian was also well versed in disguising himself? This was the blind spot brought about by his vision and reality, that even if he was in peak form, he might still end up overlooking. Ling Tian could be considered lucky to have escaped his clutches again today. However, can luck follow a person forever? The sky was already darkening, and as the last ray of light disappeared, darkness once again embraced the land. In this eerily quiet forest, one could not see their hands stretched out in front of them. Justice suddenly had a thought. In these sort of circumstances, with Ling Tian not possessing greater strength than him, and with similar night capabilities, he had an advantage against Ling Tian. With no signs of movement in the surroundings, Ling Tian was definitely still within the forest. And with Justice hot in his trails, there could be no way that Ling Tian would have traveled far. Thus, he had to be around somewhere, and was holding his breath and hiding. In order to hide from Justice, one not only had to hold their breath but also seal all the pores on their body, to prevent any leakage of their aura. However, to do so would require heaven-defying internal energy to maintain for long periods of time. Even for Justice himself, the longest he could maintain this form was for a whole night, let alone Ling Tian, whose endurance was way below his. Justice let out a smile on his face and sat down cross-legged as he slowly exhaled. He unhurriedly circulated his energy, his spiritual sense pouring out in torrents like mercury around him. With his position as the focal point, he slowly released his sense farther outward, as though he could search the entire world by doing so. So long as Ling Tian was still within the forest, Any movement he made, even if it was his heart slightly beating, he would be able to detect it, and under cover of darkness, one's internal strength would be the deciding factor here. Let us see who can endure longer. Ling Tian was really seated under a tree not far ahead, his back leaning upon the tree without a single movement. He seemed to have melded into the tree, the forest, and even the entire night. 2 hours passed. 4 hours passed. There was still no movement between the both of them, and the entire forest was silent like a grave. The only sound came from the crickets, which were still unaware of the situation. Ling Tian could not help but groan inwardly. He had actually planned with full confidence that given enough time, Justice would start to become suspicious of his own decisions and continue to chase him. To think that Justice could have such determination in his decision, even being so steadfast after being tricked so many times. In contrast, his method, while allowing him to hide completely, was the most strength-sapping. If he were to continue doing so, he would eventually tire out and reveal his location. By then, if he still wanted to escape from Justice's hands, that would be nothing but a pipe dream. But if he were to attempt to run now, in this patch of darkness, it would be a simple matter for Justice to catch up to him. Caught between a rock and a hard place, he could only cry out in anguish. Did he underestimate this #1 expert after all? Ling Tian's brain began to whirl as he tried to come out with ways to escape his predicament. Before Ling Tian could come out with a plausible plan, Justice had moved on his side. After all, the initiative lay on his side. As it turned out, Justice had unknowingly stuck his hands into his chest pocket out of boredom, but he came across a small item. This gave him great joy when he realized how he could force Ling Tian out of his position. Furthermore, it was something obtained from Ling Tian. At this point, he almost wanted to burst out in laughter. Ling Tian, this is called paying for your crimes. To be able to get one up Ling Tian this time, Justice was immeasurably satisfied. What Justice was holding now was precisely what Ling Tian had left in the earlier forest, the pistol of serpent's spit. Chapter 366, Payback Time. The item which Justice had felt in his embrace was the pistol of serpent's spit which Ling Tian had previously used against him. Being a medicinal expert in the world, Justice naturally knew the usage method of the pistol of serpent's spit. Breaking a finger-long piece into 10 small segments, he lit them all up and threw them in different directions. With his powerful inner chi, each and every section was thrown a few 100 feet away and surrounded the whole area. According to Justice's guess, Ling Tian would definitely be within this area. Thinking about the pitiful looks of Ling Tian upon being surrounded by snakes, Justice could not help but feel delighted in his heart as he let out a snicker. Justice's guess was indeed correct, and Ling Tian was in this area. As Ling Tian was observing his surroundings, he suddenly saw a flint sparking in the distance and a small flame being thrown near him. Then, he could smell a fishy smell and immediately knew what was going on. With this item being present, the snakes in his surroundings would definitely become agitated and come to surround him. Although the snakes wouldn't pose any threat to him at all, he couldn't even move right now. As long as he made the slightest movement, Justice would definitely spot him. However, how could he remain still if thousands of snakes were to climb onto him? Ling Tian could not help but be filled with anxiousness. Will I fall prey to my own methods? What is this? As the #1 expert in the world today, why are you learning how to use such strange things? Furthermore, how can you act like a scrap collector, collecting the thing I left behind to harm you? Ling Tian could not help but be speechless. An unparalleled expert was different indeed, not letting go of any item that could possibly be of use to him. Rustling sounds could already be heard in the bushes, and while it was sparse, it was a sign that the snakes had already picked up the scent of the pistol. Justice could naturally hear the snakes as well and could not help but smile with delight. This sound, which had almost angered him to death earlier this afternoon, now sounded like a heavenly tune in his ears. Ling Tian, enjoy the gift that you gave me. Haha. The rustling sounds became louder and louder, and more densely concentrated. It was as though all the snakes in the forest were being attracted to Ling Tian, and he could already hear the hissing sound of the snakes. The air was filled with a fishy stench which would make one gag upon smelling it. Ling Tian was not justice, and he could not block his senses and become one with the world. I can't wait any longer. If I continue to stay still, I will end up as the supper of these snakes. In the darkness, many pairs of green glowing eyes were already nearing Ling Tian. Just when he wanted to stand back up, an idea flashed past in his head and his eyes lit up. Justice obviously didn't have much of the pistol, and the single stick which he threw was already about to be burnt up. However, Ling Tian still had another full 2 sticks in his embrace. This could definitely be a game-changing move, if... Thinking about this, Ling Tian hesitated no longer and darted into the air. With the flash of his blade, he darted further into the forest and dismembered all the snakes in his way. The moment Ling Tian made a move, Justice discovered him and let out a hearty laugh. Ling Tian, do you still think you can escape? How does it feel to fall prey to your own technique? With a swing of his arms, Justice darted into the air like a swallow and gave chase like a bolt of lightning. At the instant Ling Tian took into the air, he took out another stick of pistol from his embrace and crushed it into dust with his hands. Then, he lit it up and threw it behind him. The next moment, a thick fishy smell filled the atmosphere. The snakes, all attracted by the smell, shot towards the place where the smell was the thickest. Right when Justice shot into the air and arrived at Ling Tian's previous location, the snakes had just sprung into the air and had not landed. They were all hanging in midair and formed a wall of snakes, blocking Justice's way. The accuracy and timing of Ling Tian's action were too astounding. If he was slightly earlier, the snakes would have already landed on the ground and he would definitely be caught up in the resulting mess. If he was slightly later, Justice would definitely have left already. Only by grasping the exact timing would he be able to block Justice's way with the wall of snakes. This small delay in time was just what Ling Tian needed. If Justice was blocked, he would definitely have to kill the snakes first. If not, he would have to wait for the snakes to land before giving chase to Ling Tian. Regardless of his choice, he would definitely have to slow down for a moment. At the same time, Ling Tian's movement technique would be unleashed at the full speed, and he would have accelerated fully. This was the instant which he wanted to grasp. The moment Justice slowed down, he would definitely take time to accelerate to his full speed again. Just this slight delay in time already determined the fact that he wouldn't be able to catch Ling Tian. With a large screen of sword light flashing in the air, the snakes in the air were all dismembered into pieces. The bloody smell filled the forest and completely covered the previously fishy smell. A shining blade light then shot into the air and landed on the branches of a tree. Justice's body stood steadily on top a thin branch as he looked into the horizon. However, Justice was not frustrated in the slightest and even let out a smile as he muttered, "A peerless talent indeed. I myself probably wouldn't be able to make such a swift adaptation in such a short time. However, even if you can escape, how will you be able to escape from my grasp? I'm enjoying this cat and mouse hunt more and more." Cat and mouse hunt? However, who was the cat, and who was the mouse between the both of them? The second afternoon after Ling Tian left the Ling residence, the Yu family's first elder, Yu Shui, and third elder, Yu Kong, arrived at the sky-bearing city. Hearing this piece of news, the whole Ling residence was stunned silly because the Yu family's purpose of this visit was actually to send their dowry. Both their families had only confirmed the engagement 2 days ago and the Yu family had already sent the dowry over. According to their traditions, their actions were far too improper and not befitting of the actions of a 1,000-year-old family. For a huge aristocratic family like theirs, no matter how anxious they were about the marriage, they should at least go through the proper rites before confirming the marriage. However, their birth charts had not even been matched, and the Yu family had actually sent Yu Bingyan's dowry over already. The whole Ling family could not help but feel that something was extremely odd. Furthermore, the luxury of the dowry was also unprecedented. Top-grade silk from the Southern Ocean, 500 meters of red, 500 meters of purple, 500 meters of black, 500 meters of green, and 500 meters of blue. A full 3 chests of top-grade jewelry, and 5 carriages of top-grade sandalwood. A whole 50 carriages were required to carry the dowry. This could no longer be called a dowry, it was no different from the Yu family shifting house. With their in-laws right at the doorstep, their Ling family couldn't possibly not go out and receive them, right? Along the way, old Madame Ling thought about the dowry and said thoughtfully, "Tinger, did you notice that the so-called dowry items are all extremely heavy and space-consuming? Although they are all valuable items, the actions of the Yu family this time really aren't befitting of the #1 family in Heavenly Star. This old lady thinks that there is something strange about this dowry." Chu Tinger's brows were also furrowed. "I have never heard of something so odd before, and I also feel that something is wrong here. However, it won't be easy for us to guess the intention of the Yu family, so it is best for us to be careful. Also, Danner going out on a trip with that expert also seems far too rushed, and the date of the dowry arriving is far too coincidental." That's right, while there should be some security to escort the dowry, the number of people the Yu family sent is a little exaggerated. On the Heavenly Star continent, who would dare to touch the Yu family in their territory? Old Madame Ling was filled with worry. Just what does the Yu family want to do? Why do I have a feeling that the Yu family is hiding their malicious intentions? I have long heard of First Elder and Third Elder's heroic name. It is indeed better to see someone in person than hear of his legends, and seeing the both of you today is indeed our honor. Our Ling family is truly grateful for the trouble the both of you went through to personally send the dowry." After finally being free from his previously mummified state, Ling Zhou was extremely energetic and full of smiles. With his fists cupped, he recited the words which Chu Tinger had forced him to memorize under her supervision. But while the words were all recited without error, his tone was completely monotonous, as though he was a child reciting his dictation. "You're too polite for General Ling to personally come out to fetch us. This old man is overwhelmed by this favor." The one who replied was the First Elder, Yuzan Shui. He was 60+ years old with a snow-white beard, green robes, and a scholarly appearance. "Please." Ling Zhou stretched out his arms. "Please." The both of them walked side by side. As the Yu family's huge troops entered the city, old Madame Ling carefully observed the Yu family's troops through the window. The more she looked at them, the greater her worries became. All of them were experts. Any random person chosen would definitely be much stronger than the guards in their Ling family, and those dressed in white were obviously a notch above those dressed in purple. At the same time, the gazes of those in purple were obviously filled with respect and fear when they looked at those dressed in white. These troops were probably no weaker than Ling Tian's forces in the Ling family courtyard, right? However, they were all here as mere guards for the dowry. With the fame of the Yu family, would they require 1,000 experts as guards? Was there really such a need? Probably a dozen of purple-dressed experts and 3 white-dressed experts would be more than sufficient. However, old Madame Ling could not help but be alarmed as her brows were furrowed. Chapter 367, Taking Advantage. A short while later, the troops of the Yu family had arrived at the Ling family. After the accommodations of the Yu family troops had been arranged, both the Yu family elders were seated in the hall with the members of the Ling family. After the maid served tea, every single person in the hall was obviously filled with their own worries, and the whole hall was filled with an awkward silence. I believe family head Ling is probably wondering why our Ling family is so anxious about Miss Bing Yan's marriage. Yuzhan Chui said with a chuckle and broke the icy atmosphere, since we are already in-laws, there is no need for me to hide anything. Our Yu family will be having a life and death battle with our arch-nemesis, Water of Heavenly Wind. However, victory is still up in the air, and things are not looking too optimistic at this moment. Yuzhan Feng let out a long sigh before saying solemnly, thus, my family head wants to arrange the marriages of the younger generation before the battle. As for the dowry, it is just a matter of time, and so we decided to send it over earlier. It is just some material possessions and isn't much to the Ling family. It is just a small token of the sincerity of our family head. These words were what the elders had come up with after some discussion to dispel the wariness of the Ling family. Truth in the lies and lies in the truth. The true art of lying is to have 90% truth and 10% lies. While these words spoken by the Yu family weren't 90% true, it was a good 50% true at the very least. Even if the Ling family didn't believe them completely, at least some of their doubts would be dispelled. However, both old Madame Ling and Chu Tinger were frowning in thought, and both Ling Zhan and Ling Zhou were already laughing heartily and warmly. I wonder where our third master and little princess are staying at now. This old man has to visit him to hand him something. The one in charge of the engagement would still be third master Yu. Yuzhan Chui said in a dignified manner. The third master and little princess are staying at the back courtyard. Men, bring the two elders to third master Yu. Old Madame Ling commanded. Thank you, madam. Both the Yu elders said with their fists cupped and left. In the hall, old Madame Ling let out a long sigh and looked out with worry. I haven't seen Tanner for 2 days already. Where exactly is he? How can he be missing at such a time? Chu Tinger replied. Tanner said that he went out for a vacation with the two seniors from Beyond Heavens. With two peerless experts by his side on Tanner's own martial arts, he would definitely be safe and back in a few days. While Tanner is extremely mature, he is still a 15 to 16-year-old teen. Now that the matters back home are finally settled, it is normal for him to go out for a breather. Tanner has been carrying far too many worries these few years, and it isn't a bad thing for him to be a little playful. Old Madame Ling shook her head and said with a low voice, not necessarily. Not necessarily. However, who knows whether she was referring to Ling Tian not necessarily being out for vacation or him not necessarily being playful. At the same time, Chu Tinger suddenly felt her heart throbbing as Ling Chen's red and swollen eyes appeared in her mind. All of a sudden, she was filled with frustration and anxiety. First elder, third elder, the both of you are here. Yu Bingyan said with a calm tone without a trace of joy. No matter what, these two elders were here to send her dowry, and Yu Bingyan should be filled with excitement and shyness. Even if she wasn't excited or shy, she should be polite at the very least. But the moment Yu Bingyan thought about how Ling Tian's life and death was still unknown, she just could not bring herself to be excited or shy. Is the little princess accustomed to staying here? Where is third master Yu? After sending away the maids and ensuring that there wasn't anyone in the surroundings, he asked with a mellow tone. However, not a single trace of concern could be felt in his words, and they were instead slightly chilly. Third uncle was injured from sparring with someone and is resting in his room. Yu Bingyan sat down on a chair and actually didn't bother ordering the maids to prepare tea. Both the first and third elder were from the ambitious faction of their Yu family and had unscrupulous means. In the family, they didn't place anyone in their sights apart from the family head, Yu Manlu. Even in the face of her father, Yu Mantang, the both of them were not the slightest bit respectful. Thus, Yu Bingyan never had any goodwill towards either of them and even slightly detested them. Third master is injured? The third elder, Yu Zhan Kong, said with a trace of obvious mockery. Was he injured in the hands of Beyond Heaven's justice? He really overestimates his own capabilities and doesn't know how to think before acting. It's about time for him to be taught a lesson." Hearing these words of mockery, Yu Bingyan couldn't help but be incensed. "That's right, third uncle lost because he was inferior. I believe that when third elder faces justice, the outcome will definitely be completely different. However, third elder's ability to predict what has happened is amazing indeed." As she said that, she suddenly realized that Ling Tian was injured by justice a mere 2 days ago. However, both the elders should be on their way to the Ling residence at that time. So how did they find out about that? Unless they had already. Yu Bingyan's face turned chilly as her heart sank. Yu Zonkong snorted and his face turned ashen. While he was conceited, he wasn't blindly arrogant and was aware of his own capabilities. In the world today, there probably wasn't a single individual who dared to say that they could win against justice. In fact, not to mention facing justice, he wasn't even confident of winning against Yu Tian. Yu Zonshui said with displeasure, "Why is there a need to concerned about such small affairs? As a member of the Yu family, the family has an important mission for you and you have to put your heart into the matter." With a single phrase, he changed the topic and ignored Yu Bingyan's words. Yu Bingyan felt her heart shake as she asked, "What important mission?" At the same time, she knew that this was probably the true reason for her family sending the dowry and could not help but be anxious. Yu Zonshui let out a chuckle and said coldly, "Ling Tian is being chased by justice from beyond heavens and his death is certain. At the earliest, news of his death will be passed on in a day. At the very latest, news of his death should be made known by 2 months. Presently, you are the only lady who Ling Tian has given a proper status and so you will be the only person left in the Ling family when Ling Tian dies. You must definitely make use of your status to grasp the strength of the Ling family and submit to our Yu family. If this matter is accomplished, you will have the greatest merit." "The greatest merit?" Yu Bingyan let out a dismal smile as her hands were clenched tightly into a fist and her face turned red. The words spoken by Yu Zonshui thundered in her ears and Yu Bingyan felt like her world was crumbling and her eyes blacking out. The humiliation she felt made her feel like pulling out her sword to commit suicide. Beyond Heavens and Martial Order Medallion had always been the biggest taboo of the Yu family. These 2 phrases were something that even the 1,000-year-old family, Jade of Heavenly Star, didn't dare to provoke. If anyone from the Yu family were to provoke them, the Yu family wouldn't stand up for them but would immediately distance themselves. In fact, the Yu family might even take the initiative to exterminate them in exchange for their peace and security. The only reason why the Yu family had not replaced Northern Wei for the past hundreds of years was because of the existence of the Martial Order Medallion. Thus, Yu Bingyan knew that despite being the #1 family in Heavenly Star, their Yu family was still fearful of Beyond Heavens. There was only a single outcome in provoking Beyond Heavens: death. Now that Ling Tian had met with such a hopeless situation, she would still be able to understand if her family wouldn't lend a helping hand. However, she never imagined that her family would make use of this chance to usurp power from the Ling family. This was no different from taking advantage of the Ling family's demise and hitting them when they are down. Such actions were just despicable to the extreme. The most infuriating thing was the fact that they were making use of the only girl in her generation to be a sacrificial pawn in this plan. Her lifetime of happiness, chastity, reputation, were all made use of by her family. All these for the greatest merit. First Elder, Bingyan has a question and I wonder if I should ask it. Yu Bingyan tried her best to suppress her fuming anger but her voice started to tremble and her whole face turned ashen. Shoot away. Yu Zonshui sat down on a chair indifferently with a calm expression. Ever since I was young, Bingyan has been taught that a lady should submit to 3 people. Submit to my father when I am at home, submit to my husband when I am married and submit to my son if my husband is dead. Yu Bingyan took in a breath of cold air. Now that the engagement is confirmed, Bingyan can be considered a member of the Ling family. For the family to make such a decision, are they considering the fact that I would be placed in a spot? Does father have anything to say about this? Second master naturally agrees to this. Yuzhan Kong snickered. This is a matter which concerns the ambitions of our Yu family, so why would second master disagree? As for the engagement with the Ling family, it is no more than a scheme. How can it be treated seriously? Even if you have to sacrifice a little for the family, so what about that? No more than a scheme cannot be treated seriously? Yu Bingyan's lips began to tremble. The whole world knows that I am going to be married to Ling Tian, and with the influence of both our families, the whole continent would probably be informed of this matter. It actually cannot be treated seriously? Do you guys have any face? Preposterous. Yuzhan Shui shouted as he said with an icy expression, "Little princess, as long as you are the little princess for our Yu family for a day, you will always be the little princess of our Yu family. No matter what, the little princess of our Yu family belongs to the Yu family. It is your honor to make sacrifices for the family. How can you be so preposterous? I am no longer the little princess of the Yu family." Yu Bingyan raised her head up proudly. "I only have a single status now, the daughter-in-law of the Ling family. Ling Tian is the man I love and nothing can change that." As she said those words, a look of happiness and satisfaction filled her face. Chapter 368, My surname is Ling. Nonsense. Yuzhan Shui hollered, "As a member of the Yu family and the only daughter of your generation, you actually dare to utter such outrageous words. You have truly forgotten your roots, your conduct is immoral and you have no sense of shame. Do you know what is the meaning of shame? Shame? To think that First Elder still knows that there is a word called shame. First Elder is just too righteous, and Bingyan does not wish to argue with you needlessly. However, there is something that I have to make clear. Yu Bingyan is no longer part of the Yu family." Yu Bingyan's eyes shone with determination. "I am the woman of my most beloved man. I am Ling Tian's woman." The last few words of hers were spoken with all the strength she could muster. "Even if I die now, the engravings on my tombstone can only be Ling family, maiden name, Yu. It will never be Yu Bingyan of the Yu family. The Celestials will not be able to change that. No one can change that." Yu Bingyan glared at the two elders stubbornly with the flame of hatred burning in her eyes. "The estate of the Ling family belongs to my husband, Ling Tian. If anyone wants to snatch it over, that person will be the enemy of me and the Ling family." With a deep breath, Yu Bingyan added on with determination, emphasizing every word she said, "No matter, who he is." Yuzhan Shui's eyes were chilly as he looked at Yu Bingyan. "If that's the case, the family head has an order. Regardless of whether or not you are willing, you have to accept the arrangements of the family and put in an effort for the family. If you do not comply, as the first elder of the Yu family, I will have the authority to carry out the punishment. Little princess, you better think things through clearly. I do not wish to shed all cordiality with you." While Yuzhan Shui's words were soft, they were filled with immense pressure. "I wonder how First Elder will punish me?" Yu Bingyan said with a frosty tone. The family head says that the little princess has been bedridden for many years, and after bearing with her illness for many years, it is time for a relapse. The little princess has always been frail, and I believe that no one would have any doubts, right?" Yuzhan Shui took a step forward with a menacing glare in his eyes. "Since the little princess does not want to choose the easy path, this old man can only serve the wine of punishment to the little princess." Yu Bingyan never imagined that her first uncle would be so heartless, giving such an order. Yu Bingyan's eyes were filled with heartache, but she didn't take a single step back, walking in front of the first elder with her eyes shut. "Even if I die now, I will not have any regrets. I am already Tian''G.E.'s wife. I will not let you die. Little princess, it is only a wine of punishment. I will only let you sleep for a month, and when you wake up, the world will be a completely different place. Yuzhan Shui said with a sinister tone as he approached Yu Bingyan. Wine of punishment? This daddy here loves to drink wine the most. Regardless of what kind of wine it is, this daddy here wants to try them all. A voice filled with killing intent boomed in the room. First elder, how does your wine of punishment taste? The faces of both the Yu elders changed as they both looked towards the door. Yu Tian's burly figure was right at the doorstep with his burly figure blocking the sunlight. Looking over, that figure seemed so enormous. Both his eyes were glaring at the two elders with a violent killing intent emanating from his body. Third Master, I heard you were injured. How are your injuries? Yuzhan Shui managed to force out a smile and welcomed Yu Tian. Yu Tian took a step back and avoided Yuzhan Shui's hand that wanted to feel his pulse. At the same time, his eagle-like eyes were fixed onto Yuzhan Shui. First elder, I am waiting for your wine of punishment. This. Yuzhan Shui stammered for a while and decided to recount the matter honestly. If Yu Tian were to fly into a rage, the whole sky-bearing city would definitely find out about the matter for sure. Third Master, this is the family head's intentions. If Third Master has any doubts, I have an order personally written by the family head. As Yuzhan Shui said that, he took out a letter from his bosom. Just when he had taken it out, Yu Tian snatched it over with a swish and sent it into Yu Bingyan's hands. Yanner, read it to your third uncle. Yu Bingyan scanned through the letter once and her countenance lost color as she said with a trembling voice, for all the members of the Yu family, after seeing this letter, they must listen to the orders of the first elder, Yuzhan Shui, and the third elder, Yuzhan Kong. No one will be allowed to defy their orders or they will be punished with the family laws. The 39th head of the Yu family, Yu Manlu. After reciting the letter, Yu Bingyan looked up at Yu Tian with her heart in a complete mess. Third Master, did you hear that? Yuzhan Kong said with a sinister tone. He had never gotten along with Yu Tian but had never been able to win against him. Now that he could witness the beautiful display of the different colors on Yu Tian's face, he felt extremely pleased as though his anger was finally vented. Scram! Does this daddy not have heirs? Yu Tian was filled with frustration already and after hearing Yuzhan Kong's sinister voice, flew into a complete rage. How could he still be bothered with whether or not Yuzhan Kong was his senior? Yuzhan Kong shouted in return, Yu Tian, is this how you talk to your senior? If you are going to be so rude, this old man will teach you a lesson on behalf of the family head. Yu Tian sneered and he began digging his nose. Senior? Damn it. Why don't you tell me how you have been acting like a senior for the past 10 years? Teach me a lesson. With just you? Pie. Yu Tian let out a mouthful of spit at the unguarded Yu Zanfeng. With a face full of Yu Tian's spit, Yu Zanfeng flew into a rage and wanted to pounce forward. Stop fooling around. Yuzhan Shui barked. Do you guys think that we are at home? Do you guys think that you can fool around as you like? Third Master Yu, both of us brothers are acting in accordance with the family head's orders and Third Master is also a member of the Yu family. Are you going to go against the family head's orders? Yu Tian retorted, what you guys want to do is your business. However, Bingyan is this daddy's blood niece. This daddy was the matchmaker for their marriage. If the both of you dare to touch her, don't blame this daddy for not showing you two any face. If things were to blow up, the plan will fail at the very most. If Big Brother wants to find fault, the both of you will not be able to escape blame either. Looking at the both of them, Yu Tian continued, don't think this daddy here doesn't know. The Yu Zhou-chan from 3 years ago whom Second Brother's Enforcement Hall punished was your grandson, right? You are obviously trying to make use of this chance to take revenge for your private affairs. Big Brother only asked the both of you to act at your discretion and never asked you to touch Bingyan. Where did the both of you old men find the guts to do that? On whose authority are the both of you acting on? Yu Shui felt his body trembling as he forcefully suppressed his anger. If Third Master insists, we can only let this matter rest. However, family head's mission cannot be ruined. What if the little princess spread this matter? Third Master, even you wouldn't be able to shoulder such blame, right? Do what you guys want, and I will not interfere in the slightest. This daddy here is from the Yu family as well. Even if I don't like you, I will not ruin your plans. Ling Tian said in a proud manner. However, do not go too far. If a single person from the Ling family is injured, this daddy here will not let the both of you go. As for Bing Yan, the engagement is already confirmed, and Bing Yan already belongs to the Ling family. She can do whatever she wants, and that is the affair of the Ling family. Not to mention the fact that I as her third uncle have no rights to interfere. Even if her father was here, he wouldn't have the rights to interfere either. I can promise both of you. Yu Bingyan suddenly said, I will not divulge your secret. As Yu Bingyan said that, even Yu Tian was completely bewildered. This wasn't Yu Bingyan's character at all. Just what was going on? Both Yu Shui and Yu Kong let out a sigh of relief. Yu Bingyan was still a member of the Yu family after all. As long as she made such a promise, she would definitely keep her word. If not, she could have definitely chosen to reject the both of them with Yu Tian as her backing. While this bonding wasn't perfect, they would still be able to barely maintain it until the point they seized authority. At the same time, Yu Bingyan's eyes were filled with a gaze as though she had been relieved from a burden. Just when she wanted to reject the Yu elders previously, Ling Tian's buzzing voice sounded by her ears, Yanner, you can agree to their request. Don't worry, young noble has already made his arrangements. Rest assured and don't be rash. Only then could Yu Bingyan finally be at ease. Since Yu Bingyan had agreed to their request and Yu Tian was obviously unwilling to listen to their commands, there wasn't a point for them to stay any longer. Exchanging a glance, Yu Shui and Yu Kong both paid their farewell together. Yu Bingyan's head was lowered without saying anything and Yu Tian ignored them completely with his head facing the sky. Despite the anger in their heart, the both of them could only swallow their anger and take their leave. After seeing the both of them leave, Yu Bingyan said with a serious tone, Third uncle, you have to go back at once. Eh? For what? Yu Tian asked with doubt. Third uncle, I am afraid that father and first uncle will. Yu Bingyan said with worry as she looked at Yu Tian with pleading eyes. Father will definitely not agree to first uncle's decision, but there isn't any news from father until now. Third uncle, if father and first uncle were to break out into a fight, only you would be able to mediate the fight. Alright. I will go back today. As Yu Tian heard that, he couldn't help but be anxious as well, hating the fact that he couldn't grow wings to fly back. Honestly, your first uncle's decision really places me in a difficult spot. Damn it, making me become the matchmaker for both of you so he can seize the estate of the Ling family. Damn it, how unlucky. If I were to remain here, the Ling family would definitely be at a disadvantage and this old man wouldn't be able to face my conscience. But if our Yu family were to be at a disadvantage, I wouldn't be able to watch that and be comfortable. Why don't I just go back and forget about everything? Damn it. I must definitely have a good fight with your first uncle when I am back. Too much. I look down on him. Chapter 369, Ling Tian out of seclusion. Just when Yu Tian wanted to take his leave, he suddenly remembered something and asked, what will you do if I leave? What if those two old fogies come and find trouble with you and force you to drink the whatever wine of punishment? What a headache. How about you come back to the Yu family with me? Yu Bingyan shook her head. Third uncle, Tian''G.E.'s life or death is still unknown, so how can I be at peace? Besides, our Yu family is here this time to usurp the authority of the Ling family, and I must definitely stay to the very end. If I were to go back to the Yu family now, it would be impossible for me to come here again. Furthermore, Sister Ling Tian is still here, and I can go to the Ling family courtyard if things take a turn for the worse. As long as I do not make any rash moves, I believe that they won't do anything to me." Ling Tian nodded his head and replied without hesitation, "All right then, I will be leaving now. If something happens, I will definitely send news to you. There also isn't a need for me to pack anything up. If I were to see those two old fogies again, I would definitely get angry again." With a laugh, he turned around and left in a carefree manner. Seeing her third uncle rush off, Yu Bingyan felt a little more at ease. Then, she felt a rustling sound behind her and Ling Tian's dainty figure appeared beside her with a bright smile. At this moment, Yu Bingyan had a strange feeling in her heart. While the person in front of her was obviously Ling Tian, she no longer felt like Ling Tian. With the smile on Ling Tian's face, it was obvious that Ling Tian was pleased with the way she dealt with the two Yu elders. But for some reason, Yu Bingyan felt the temperature around her drop by a few degrees with her heart being filled with coldness. Such a feeling dissipated Yu Bingyan's original intention to pounce into Ling Tian's embrace and cry her heart out. Looking at Yu Bingyan stare at her with a slight trace of shock, Ling Tian let out a calm smile and said, "Sister Bingyan, the Yu family brought their troops here and it isn't convenient for you to join in this matter. I think that you should go to the Ling family courtyard temporarily to let loose for a while and not bother about these troubling affairs. Regardless of how the matter develops in the future, you will definitely feel frustrated." Yu Bingyan let out a melancholic smile, "Sister Chen, I know I am useless and have brought the Ling family a huge trouble." Ling Tian replied in a cool-headed manner, "You do not have to blame yourself for this. Even without you, the Yu family would eventually seek trouble with us. What has to come will come." Yu Bingyan responded with a soft before lowering her head, "How can I hide in the Ling family courtyard with the present situation being so delicate? The first elder will definitely not allow me to leave their sights." However, Ling Tian replied with a confident smile, "Didn't Yu Shui just say that it was time for Sister Bingyan's illness to have a relapse?" Yu Bingyan felt her heart shake and she let out a smile. She suddenly felt that the Ling Tian in front of her was giving her an extremely foreign feeling. Regardless of whether it was her cool-headed attitude in dealing with matters or her calm and unflustered bearing, it was as though there was another Ling Tian standing right in front of her. Especially since Ling Tian's gaze would be occasionally chilly, almost exactly like Ling Tian. However, this was not Ling Tian intentionally imitating Ling Tian but just her being extremely similar to him. It was as though this was her natural bearing. If she could emanate a dense killing intent, her demeanor would definitely be exactly like Ling Tian's. However, why would this feel extremely foreign to her? Because it was Ling Tian with such a bearing? There shouldn't be any troubles today and you should prepare to feign illness. Remember, your illness is a result of anger. I have to rush back to the Ling family courtyard." Ling Tian said with a warm smile, "It is probably time for Ling Jian to exit seclusion. I wonder how his comprehension of the sword is? If this fellow finds out that something has happened to the young noble, he will definitely go crazy. If I am not around, I am sure that no one will be able to rein him in. If something were to go wrong, things would be bad." As she said that, Ling Tian's gaze began to grow distant as she looked to the sky. "Young noble, are you alright? Do you know that there are many people missing you here?" In the Ling family courtyard, a secret chamber where it was impossible for others to spy on. In front of the secret chamber, both Ling Lei and Ling Dian stood there straight without any movement. However, their faces were filled with worry and depression. In the past 3 days, not a single sound could be heard from Ling Jian who was in the secret chamber, and they couldn't help but be worried about Ling Jian's safety. After 3 days without food and water, no matter how profound Ling Jian's inner chi was, it wasn't a small matter. Just what should they do if something were to go wrong? If anything untoward were to happen to Brother Jian? Especially the fact that the life or death of their young noble was still undetermined. Even if all of them had absolute confidence in their young noble, they couldn't help but be shaken by the frightening martial arts displayed by the green-robed expert. Can their young noble really escape alone? The assassins of the first pavilion were all waiting for Ling Tian to come out to make a decision. If not for the fact that they were usually bound by strict rules and the orders left behind by Ling Tian before he left, they would have definitely chased after justice already. For their young noble, death was nothing. So what if their deaths were certain? In the secret chamber, a loud whooshing sound could suddenly be heard. At the start, the wind was like the comfortable spring breeze, and it gradually evolved into the autumn breeze, before turning into the frigid winter winds and finally transforming into a huge hurricane. This process lasted for a full 4 hours before the winds finally stopped. As Ling Lei and Ling Tian nervously looked at each other, the door to the secret chamber opened up. A shabbily dressed Ling Tian walked out with fatigue all over his face, but his body still standing up straight. In Ling Tian's hand was a sword that was completely intact. The black iron sword. Looking at this sword, both Ling Tian and Ling Lei were filled with ecstasy. Ling Tian had once said that if Ling Tian couldn't break through to the next realm, he would never allow Ling Tian to wield a complete sword. Now that Ling Tian walked out with a black iron sword, they knew that Ling Tian had not let Ling Tian down. He had indeed broken through to the realm of Sword Soul. Ling Tian turned around and looked at the secret chamber behind him with respect in his eyes. When I first saw young noble, he was only 6 years old but helped me to solve all the problems I couldn't solve. From then on, young noble became the only master in my life. From the moment I took my revenge, I knew that my whole life would be spent serving the young noble. Apart from accomplishing the missions he has given to me, there will no longer be a second purpose in my life. Ling Tian let out a long breath and said in a voice that only he could hear, "Ever since I had some accomplishment in my martial arts, I always had a strange thought. Every time I achieved a breakthrough, I would feel as though young noble's realm was getting further and further away from me. I would feel as though young noble's strength was at an unfathomable level. Especially how young noble allowed me to comprehend the essence of my sword way with just a few words. My only regret is the fact that there are some enemies that I cannot deal with and have to trouble the young noble." Ling Tian's eyes glowed with worship. Young noble should probably be nearing the realm of a celestial, right? Is there anyone capable of being his match? As he said that, he turned around with a rare smile and realized that the two brothers behind him had an odd expression. Thus, he couldn't help but be stunned as he asked, "What's wrong? What's with your expression? Did something happen?" At the same time, he couldn't help but have a bad feeling as though something big had happened. He then took another step forward and questioned, "What happened?" Ling Tian and Ling Lei were both stumped for a moment. They were extremely aware of how close the young noble was to Ling Tian. However, wasn't it the same for them? Tears filled their eyes and almost streamed down their cheeks as their lips began to tremble. It's young noble. Something happened." Ling Tian was shocked, and he grabbed Ling Lei up by his neck, with his eyes becoming bloodshot as though he had turned crazy. "Nonsense. How can anything happen to the young noble? Young noble's wisdom is like a celestial being, how can anything happen to him? Explain yourselves clearly." His voice sounded like thunder, with soil being dislodged in the cave. "Young noble? He is being chased by justice from beyond heavens. Brother Jian, justice is that green-dressed expert that we faced outside the Smoky Thea Tower. Young noble already left Skybearing alone and his life or death is unknown." Seeing how Ling Lei was choked to the point he couldn't speak, Ling Tian quickly explained. "Peng." Ling Tian slammed Ling Lei to the wall and Ling Tian glared at them coldly with killing intent emanating. "Beyond heavens? Justice? Green-dressed expert? So what? Good. What good brothers the both of you are. To protect us, young noble purposely led the enemy out of Skybearing with his life or death unknown. However, you two BSTRDS do not know how to repay the young noble's kindness with death and have the cheek to stand here like statues. Have your consciences been eaten up by the dogs?" Both of them stood up straight and did not dare to say a single word. In fact, the both of them did not know what to say at all. Ling Tian grunted and did not pause for a moment, disappearing like a bolt of lightning. Chapter 370, Ling Tian making decisions. Young noble is in danger. Young noble needs my aid. With a breakthrough in my strength, I can use my life in exchange for the green-robed expert's injuries. I will be able to help the young noble to seize an opportunity. Ling Tian thought this to himself as he accelerated at full speed and disappeared like a wisp of smoke. "Where are you going?" A frosty voice sounded by his ears. While the voice wasn't loud, Ling Tian stopped immediately upon hearing it. "Last Chen." Ling Tian turned around. "Good that you are here. I am going to help the young noble, and our chances will be bigger with you around." "You are going to save the young noble? I think you are going to harm the young noble." Ling Tian snorted as she said with a fierce glare, "Is there any meaning for you to go? With your martial arts, what can you do even if you find young noble? Aren't you only capable of being a burden and creating trouble for young noble? Stay here in the courtyard, and you are not to go anywhere without my orders." Bullshit. For the first time in his life, Ling Tian scolded Ling Tian and flew into a rage. "Last Chen, what do you mean by that? Did young noble bring us up for nothing? Are we supposed to watch by the side when young noble is facing a life or death tribulation? Especially you. You are young noble's most beloved lady, but you are actually asking me to ignore young noble at such a time? What are your intentions?" Pa. With a swing of her arms, Ling Tian sent out a lightning-fast slap and Ling Tian did not even have a chance to react. Ling Tian's frosty voice then sounded, "Ling Tian, do you still know that I am young noble's beloved woman? Isn't young noble my most beloved man as well? However, being rash isn't the way to solve our current problem. If we had a chance to beat justice by gathering all of our forces, do you think that young noble will take the risk to leave Skybearing? If you are going to act so willful all the time, you will definitely eventually ruin young noble's plans. Let me ask you, who did young noble once say should be in charge when he isn't around?" Ling Tian held onto his right cheek that was slapped by Ling Tian with an incredulous expression. Is this still that gentle Ling Tian? Is this still that lass who would tremble when seeing blood? She actually dared to slap me in public. Ling Tian was stunned silly and did not hear what Ling Tian said. "Are you deaf?" Ling Tian shouted, "I am asking you, if young noble isn't around, who is in charge?" "You will be in charge, but young noble." Ling Tian snorted and turned around. "What if someone defies my orders?" Ling Tian asked in a threatening manner. "Kill without mercy." Ling Tian lowered his head. Looking at his expression, Ling Tian finally felt her anger dissipate slightly. "At least you still remember. Do you know why young noble would take such a huge risk to lure justice away? Do you know what kind of a crisis our Ling family and Ling family courtyard are facing right now? Do you know what young noble's orders were before he left? Why aren't you talking? You don't know anything. You only know how to be rash. You have really disappointed me. But it doesn't matter if you disappoint me. Do you know who you have disappointed the most? Young noble." Ling Tian lifted up his head and saw Ling Tian's frosty gaze. He then lowered his head and realized that he really didn't know anything at all. He only wanted to help his young noble with the hot blood he had. However, just what could he do to help his young noble? Using his life? Even if he wanted to die, that wasn't the way. His life only belonged to the young noble. Just what was he thinking? Only now did Ling Tian feel the stinging pain on his cheek. As Ling Tian rubbed his right cheek, a sudden thought appeared in his head, this lass has changed. Be it the way she talks or her actions, they are all exactly like the young noble. She has transformed into the young noble because he has left. She is indeed young noble's most beloved woman. Ling Tian could not help but respect Ling Chen in his heart. Seeing Ling Tian calm down, Ling Chen began to describe everything that happened in the past few days to him. Finally, Ling Chen said calmly, before young noble left, he emphasized the fact that this will be the biggest challenge that we have faced. For himself, for the Ling family, or for the courtyard. The crisis that young noble is facing alone is also the most dangerous crisis. So, we must ensure that nothing goes wrong on our side so that the young noble doesn't have to be distracted. We can't give the young noble any additional burdens. Everyone must listen to my orders and no one is to act out of line. Anyone who goes against my orders will be punished severely. Then, Ling Chen glanced at Ling Tian. If anyone makes a rash move and spoils young noble's plans, he should know what outcome awaits him. Ling Tian could not help but be drenched in cold sweat. He then let out an awkward chuckle and rubbed his right cheek. Since young noble left behind a complete plan, I will definitely listen to all of your orders. But last Chen, this slap of yours is really vicious. Ling Chen glared at him and grunted, if this slap of mine doesn't hurt and can't wake you up, there will be more for you to suffer. The most important thing for us to do now is to collate our forces. Apart from the few squadrons nearest to us, there isn't a need to contact the rest. The Yu family has already entered the Ling residence and is eyeing on us covetously. They have already disrupted our ordinary operations, and if they were to find out about our forces in the periphery, they will probably be able to take care of them easily. Second, after the situation in Skybearing stabilizes, there is an important mission for your first pavilion. I believe all of you will be extremely excited. It seems like your first pavilion has not had any major operations for a long time already. As she said that, a dense killing intent shot out from her eyes. It has really been a long time since our last major operation. What kind of a mission is that? As Ling Tian heard that, he was immediately excited. According to what I know, young noble's current crisis is because of the Northern Wei's crown prince using the martial order medallion to make a request. All of our troubles are a result of that, including the crisis our Ling family is facing. Ling Chen said with a cold sneer, since Wei Qingping dares to do that, he will have to endure the revenge of our Ling family. At that time, your first pavilion will be in charge of slaughtering the members of the Northern Wei imperial family. You must not miss a single one. Ling Chen's tone was extremely cold and calm, as though she wasn't the one giving out such a cruel order. If a single person is left out, you will be letting down the young noble for his many years of training. I will not say anything more. Yes. Ling Tian's face contorted in a vicious manner, don't worry, there won't be a single survivor in the Northern Wei Palace. The sound of galloping horses could be heard and Ling Tu sped over with an anxious appearance. Sister Chen, Brother Jian, young madam's illness had a relapse and she is currently unconscious. The many physicians are all helpless and old madam commanded me to summon you back. Ling Chen let out a smile. Who would have thought that Bing Yan would be so anxious? It seems like she really doesn't want to see the disgusting faces of those from the Yu family. In the main hall, old Madam Ling and the other members of the Ling family were filled with worry. Even Yuzhan Shui and Yuzhan Kong's expressions were heavy. Both of them could not help but feel that something was odd about Yu Bingyan's relapse. Before they even had the chance to deal with her, why would her illness have a sudden relapse? Could there be something fishy going on? Frantic footsteps sounded from the outside and a servant reporting to old Madam, Miss Ling Chen and Ling Tian request an audience. Old Madam Ling's frown eased up a little as she replied, let them come in. Then, she said to the two Yu elders with a smile, these two people, one of them is Tanner's maid and the other is his follower. Although they do not have any abilities and are slightly versed in medicine, they are absolutely loyal to Tanner. As she said that, Yuzhan Shui and Yuzhan Kong both let out relaxed smiles as they thought, so they are just two servants, nothing to worry about. Under the gazes of everyone present, a young man and lady walked in. Seeing so many people in the hall staring at them, they seemed extremely nervous as they knelt down and said, "Paying our respects to the family head and old madam." Old Madam Ling responded with an before saying, "Rise. What has happened to Bing Yan?" Ling Tian took a step forward and said anxiously, "Young madam's mood seems to be a little down and it seems like she suffered from a shock recently. Together with the fact that her body is weak, it's best that she recuperates in a location with a good view and fresh air." "Oh." Old Madam Ling nodded her head and instructed, "If that's the case, bring Bing Yan to the Ling family courtyard for recuperation. Bring her back to the residence when she is feeling better. Tell those at the courtyard to take good care of young madam. If anything were to happen to her, all of them will be executed," Old Madam Ling said sternly. "Yes. We obey old madam's orders." Ling Tian kowtowed and wanted to take her leave. Old madam, isn't this a little inappropriate?" Yuzhan Shui stood up. "Our little princess isn't feeling well and her illness is one that she has had since she was young. It isn't good for her to travel long distances, and it is best for her to recuperate in the residence. If she were to leave the city and anything happened, it wouldn't be good if there are any delays." First Elder is unaware, Old Madam Ling said with a kindly chuckle, that the #1 physician of our sky-bearing city, Yi Yannan, stays near the courtyard. If Bing Yan stays at the courtyard, it would be easier for her to receive treatment. She then waved her hands towards Ling Chen and Ling Jian. "Are you not going to send young madam to the courtyard? What are you waiting for?"
Thank you for your continued following. Please support us by subscribe to encourage our continued creation. And press the bell to notify new chapter from us. Thank you.